You wouldn't have those two guys standing together and not talk about what the American public is thinking about.
Well, when you think about foreign policy, a lot of people are talking about, okay, we want to see the Joe Biden-Sarah Palin debate. Are you even hearing buzz about that at this point?
Well, no, not yet. We will.
Okay.
We will next week. Obviously, you've been showing the clip of Sarah Palin's interview with Katie Couric, and it was so interesting for me to watch that, because when we saw Sarah Palin come out of the box at the Republican convention, she was full of energy. She was a terrific public speaker. She was full of self-confidence. And what I saw in that clip with Katie Couric was somebody who's probably been given all the talking points she needs, somebody who's afraid to stray off of any point for fear of making a mistake.
You're talking about when Sarah Palin made speeches, Gloria, not the interview itself.
Well, that's right. And
she came across a different person, it seemed, in the interview.
Well, she did, and she's lost whatever self-confidence I think she had to start with, because I think, in fact, that their strategy was to keep her away from us till they got her up to speed. But they kept her away so long that they've done her a disservice. Because, you know, the more you do interviews, the better you are at doing interviews. And so I don't think they've really helped her out a bunch, and now the spotlight is really going to be on her at that debate.
That's interesting. That came up in our editorial meeting. One of our producers said, you know, they should have started her maybe with a smaller paper or smaller stations and then moved her up to the network. It's interesting to watch. Gloria Borger, thanks so much.
Sure.
Well, Sarah Palin's lack of foreign policy experience, that's just one of the big issues that critics have blasted her on since she was named John McCain's running mate. In one of her few interviews with the media, Palin sat down, as you just saw there and heard Gloria and I were talking about it, with CBS Evening News anchor Katie Couric, and the foreign policy issue was definitely a key question.
You've cited Alaska's proximity to Russia as part of your foreign policy experience. What did you mean by that?
That Alaska has a very narrow maritime border between a foreign country, Russia, and on our other side, the land boundary that we have with Canada. It's funny that a comment like that was kind of made to, I don't know, you know.
Okay. This is Alaskan speak, all right? And it's Palin-speak, subcategory Alaskan speak. It's like the way we think up here. It's one side of us is Canada, a nation. Another side of us is Russia, a nation. We are just the 20th, one-fifth the size of the United States. We have all this coastline that has to be dealt with. That's 6 times more than the rest of the United States. We think of the lower 48, that describes a block of land. Everything is thought up here in big items, and just for us to say that, you're just like, oh, don't you see it? Don't you understand? Russia's right over there. And that's not counting, for instance, how close we are to Korea, Japan, China. I can go to Beijing, and if there was a direct flight to Beijing or a direct flight to Miami, I would get to Beijing faster as the crow flies. Let's go on with this.
Reporters. Yeah, moss, I guess that's the word, yeah.
Well, explain to me why that enhances your foreign policy credentials.
Well, it certainly does, because our next-door neighbors are foreign countries. They're in the state that I am the executive of. And
have you ever been?
Okay. Yes, they deal with us nationally. Actually, we have consulates in our city, so we're dealing with Korea especially. I mean, with 100 and some languages, or 80 some, whatever it is now. When I remember, it was 103 in the school district back in the 80s, but some of them have died out. Ironically, in my lifetime, languages have died out up here.
Involved with any negotiations, for example, with the Russians?
We have trade missions back and forth. We do. It's very important when...
Okay, trade missions back and forth. Aeroflot has a right, or did have the right, they would fly into Anchorage, directly from, I want to say Matagan. There's some other two cities over there that I don't remember exactly where they flew from. But they flew over here they have, Alaska Airlines has actually had flights directly. I don't think they do now. Canada at certain times has flights directly. Of course, you can fly a lot. We have more airplanes, like even her husband has one, little Piper, but we have more airplanes per capita than the rest of the world, and we fly around. If you want to drive to Haines, Alaska, you have to drive through Canada. And the trade unions, the trade delegations come over every year. The governor, maybe some people call it a pork trip, but just one of those trips that you get to go on, junket, that's what I mean. But they go to the Asian countries because we sell a lot of our food, fish to Japan. And before the Congress cut off our forests, we sold a lot of our forest products to Japan also. But then, of course, the environmentalists got into that, and that ended that.
And you consider even national security issues with Russia as Putin rears his head and comes into the airspace of the United States of America. Where do they go? It's Alaska. It's just right over the border. It is from Alaska that we send those out to make sure that...
Send those out. The F-22s. We send out the F-22s. I mean, you can't expect... Okay, here's what happens. The Bearcats, I believe that's what they're still called, they're planes that the Russians use to fly into our space. Don't you remember, like, KAL 007? Yeah, Korean Airlines 007, shot down by the Russians. It was seen deviating off its course at Shimia, but... And that's just hearsay out here, up here. But that's a little island where there's a military base, and it's got the radar watches all the planes flying across the country there, and they're locally. But anyhow, the Bearcats come into our airspace, and then the F-22s are scrambled, and what they do is see the response time. You know, it's not like they can send a missile over here to see the response time of that, so they send over planes to see the response time of that. You also got to understand that the DEW system's up there in the northern part of Alaska, and they interact all the time, you know, and it's just to sit there and say, hey, why are you questioning us? How many other you states down there who have governors and stuff, you know, except for the northern ones that go along Canada and the southern ones that go along, say, the Mexico region, and you got your Florida, Caribbean region. You know, the ones in the middle don't have any foreign experience, but you're going to knock them out? Don't you think there's a lot of people out there that can help her? And that's what's a governor do. She goes and, for instance, on the Pacific Commission, Northern Halibut, Pacific, whatever, it controls the halibut up here. See, we don't remember all these things, but we try to tell them to you, but our minds work a lot faster than our tongues.
An eye is being kept on this very powerful nation, Russia, because they are right there. They are right next to our state.
I like all politicians, Sarah Palin's fair game for the late show.
Okay,
yeah. She's catching plenty of ribbing. Check out what Chris Rock had to say on CNN's Larry King Live.
I don't know. She's done 3 interviews, and she's running for vice president of the United States.
How many interviews, Chris, does a person have to do? What is the limit of interviews, you know? At what point? This is political. And, of course, all this is going on is political, and our politics get into our newsrooms, and that's cool. That's cool. It's, you know, I know that this person, Sarah, is a good person, so I'm not worried about any of this. And if she comes back up here and is our governor, hey, you know, that's great. And I'll even go take the time to either re-meet her at a political level or meet her for the first time, because can't remember. But anyhow, doesn't matter. I think it's cool. I can understand what she's saying. Maybe all of us up here are flawed, but we think big, Chris. We think big. And that's what gets things done. Because if you think right now they're sinking $700 billion, we call it $1 trillion. You take care, buddy.